My grandmother told me this story when I was a child, her wrinkled fingers clutching my wrist tighter than usual, her cloudy eyes darting toward the window as if someone might be listening. "Never go there, Arjun," she whispered. "If you hear its name, forget it. If you see its path, turn back. Because the village does not forgive strangers." Of course, I never believed her. It sounded like another one of her rural superstitions, ghost stories meant to scare restless boys. But sometimes late at night, I would catch her praying under her breath, repeating the same name over and over, a name she refused to say out loud when the sun was up. That name returned to me 20 years later. I was working as a documentary researcher for a small production company in Kolkata. We specialized in local myths and forgotten folktales, and one late night, while combing through digital archives of old Bengali newspapers, I found a clipping from 1963. Entire village missing, police baffled. 237 residents of Devpur vanish overnight. No signs of struggle, no bodies found. The name froze me. Devpur. The article was brief, vague, almost dismissive. It blamed a mass migration due to economic hardship, but there were no records of where those 237 people went. No relocation lists, no follow-ups, just gone. Curiosity burned inside me. I searched further. In 1993, a journalist's blog post mentioned the ruins of Devpur, describing broken houses overtaken by vines, cooking pots left on stoves, even clothing still hanging on lines, as if people had simply evaporated. The blog ended abruptly. No further posts from that journalist existed. Then, another coincidence. The years. 1963. 1993. 30 years apart. And now, it was 2023. I told myself it was just a myth, a coincidence. But the temptation was unbearable. A story like this could make my career, if it was real. So, against every warning in my blood, I decided to go to Devpur. The road to the village was harder than expected. Google Maps didn't recognize Devpur at all. My requests for directions from locals in the nearby town of Ranagat were met with silence, suspicious glances, or abrupt subject changes. One old tea seller, when I asked, dropped the glass he was holding and muttered, "Why would you go there now? It's too late." Too late? When I pressed him, he only shook his head and gave me tea free of charge, refusing my money as if he didn't want any trace of me connected to him. It took hours of scanning old maps and triangulating landmarks, until finally, at dusk, I found the dirt path that matched the faded cartography. The path was overgrown, almost hidden by wild bamboo and thorn bushes. It was as if nature itself wanted to bury it. The first thing I noticed was silence. Forests in Bengal are never quiet. There are always birds, insects, the croaking of frogs, something. But as I walked deeper into the path, the sounds thinned out until there was nothing. Not even the wind. The air grew colder. My footsteps crunched louder than they should have. The deeper I went, the more the world felt like it was holding its breath. And then, suddenly, it appeared. A village. Not ruins. Not abandoned. But alive. Smoke curled from chimneys. Lanterns glowed warmly through windows. Children played near a well, their laughter oddly hollow, echoing far too long before fading. Women carried water pots. Men stacked hay. It was as if I had stepped into another time, an older India, untouched by the modern world. The strangest thing? No one looked surprised to see me. As I stepped onto the main dirt road, conversations paused. Faces turned toward me, smiling, not with curiosity but with expectation. One of the children pointed at me and shouted something in Bengali I couldn't quite catch. Immediately, a tall man with a white beard walked forward, hands outstretched as if greeting an old friend. "Arjun," he said warmly. His voice was smooth, too smooth, as if rehearsed. "Welcome home." My blood ran cold. How did he know my name? The villagers gathered around me, smiling too widely, their eyes glinting in the lantern light. Children tugged at my shirt. Women offered me water. Men clapped my shoulders. Every voice repeated the same phrase, "Welcome home!" I stammered, You know me?" The old man chuckled softly, placing his hand on my shoulder. "Of course. We've been waiting for you." I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. But then I glanced back down the dirt path I came from, and there was nothing. No path. No forest. Just more village houses, stretching endlessly into the dark. The road to the village was harder than expected. Google Maps didn't recognize Devpur at all. My requests for directions from locals in the nearby town of Ranagat were met with silence, suspicious glances, or abrupt subject changes. One old tea seller, when I asked, dropped the glass he was holding and muttered, "Why would you go there now? It's too late." Too late. When I pressed him, he only shook his head and gave me tea free of charge, refusing my money as if he didn't want any trace of me connected to him. It took hours of scanning old maps and triangulating landmarks until finally, at dusk, I found the dirt path that matched the faded cartography. The path was overgrown, almost hidden by wild bamboo and thorn bushes. It was as if nature itself wanted to bury it. The first thing I noticed was silence. Forests in Bengal are never quiet. There are always birds, insects, the croaking of frogs, something. But as I walked deeper into the path, the sounds thinned out until there was nothing, not even the wind. The air grew colder. My footsteps crunched louder than they should have. The deeper I went, the more the world felt like it was holding its breath. And then, suddenly, it appeared. A village. Not ruins, not abandoned, but alive. Smoke curled from chimneys. Lanterns glowed warmly through windows. Children played near a well, their laughter oddly hollow, echoing far too long before fading. Women carried water pots, men stacked hay. It was as if I had stepped into another time, an older India untouched by the modern world. The strangest thing? No one looked surprised to see me. As I stepped onto the main dirt road, conversations paused. Faces turned toward me, smiling, not with curiosity, but with expectation. One of the children pointed at me and shouted something in Bengali I couldn't quite catch. Immediately, a tall man with a white beard walked forward, hands outstretched as if greeting an old friend. "Arjun," he said warmly. His voice was smooth, too smooth, as if rehearsed. "Welcome home." My blood ran cold. How did he know my name? The villagers gathered around me, smiling too widely, their eyes glinting in the lantern light. Children tugged at my shirt. Women offered me water. Men clapped my shoulders. Every voice repeated the same phrase, "Welcome home." I stammered, You know me?" The old man chuckled softly, placing his hand on my shoulder. "Of course. We've been waiting for you." I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. But then I glanced back down the dirt path I came from. And there was nothing. No path, no forest, just more village houses stretching endlessly into the dark. When I awoke, the sunlight spilling through the cracks was weak, almost gray, as though it had filtered through smoke before touching the earth. My throat was dry, my skin clammy. The memory of last night clawed at me, the chanting, the hands in the dark, my name etched into the clay. I wanted to believe it was a nightmare, but the fresh grooves on the wall proved otherwise. I needed to leave. I stumbled out of the house, blinking against the pale morning light. The village was alive with motion, yet eerily silent. Men carried bundles of wood toward the center square. Women painted symbols on the ground using chalky white powder. Children wove garlands of marigolds with frightening precision, their small fingers moving too quickly, their eyes never once looking up. And then I realized every single villager was smiling, the exact same smile, wide, unwavering, as though carved into their faces. A cold shiver rippled down my spine. "Arjun!" The voice came from behind me. It was the old man again, standing in the doorway of the record house. His white beard glistened faintly in the strange light. "It's time," he said simply. "For what?" I demanded, though my voice cracked. "For the renewal." They gathered me in the square. The entire village stood in a circle, faces glowing with that unnatural calm. At the center stood a stone platform, ancient and cracked, its surface stained with something dark that time had failed to erase. The old man raised his arms, and the murmurs died instantly. 30 years have passed, he intoned, and the circle must be closed. I felt dozens of eyes burning into me. "What does this have to do with me?" I shouted, my voice shaking. The old man smiled. "Everything!" He motioned, and 2 villagers stepped forward, holding a bundle wrapped in faded red cloth. They placed it on the platform and unfolded the fabric. Inside was a book. The same book I had seen last night. But now, my name wasn't just written. It was circled in dark ink, the mark wet and glistening as though freshly drawn. My stomach lurched. The old man began to chant in that strange dialect, the villagers joining in unison. The air vibrated with the sound. My ears rang. The ground itself seemed to hum beneath my feet. I tried to back away, but hands clamped around my arms, my shoulders, my back, holding me in place. Again. Then I saw them. At the edges of the square, shadows gathered. Not normal shadows, but figures. Tall, gaunt, faceless, their outlines shifting like smoke. They slid across the ground, reaching toward the villagers with skeletal fingers. And yet, the villagers didn't recoil. They welcomed them, smiling, always smiling. The shadows pressed their hands against the villagers' chests, and something passed between them. A shudder, a flicker of light, life itself being drained. Yet the villagers didn't fall. They stood straighter, their smiles wider, as though fed instead of consumed. My stomach twisted. The shadows weren't killing them. They were preserving them, feeding them in some grotesque exchange. And then, the shadows turned toward me. "No!" I screamed, thrashing against the hands that held me. But the old man raised his palm, halting the shadows mid-step. "Not yet," he said. His voice echoed, as if layered with many others. "He must see first. He must understand." He pointed toward the edge of the square. "Bring her." 2 villagers emerged, dragging a young woman by the arms. She couldn't have been older than 20. Her eyes were wide with terror, her mouth gagged with cloth. She struggled violently, but the villager's grip was unyielding. My chest tightened. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't like them. She was like me. They forced her onto the platform beside the book. The old man's smile never faltered as he picked up a small, rusted blade from the altar. I felt my blood run cold. "No! Stop!" I shouted, lunging forward, but the hands tightened around me. "What are you doing to her?" The old man looked at me, eyes glimmering. "She is the offering," he said calmly. "So you may take her place." The crowd began to chant louder, the ground trembling beneath us. The shadows loomed closer, their faceless forms flickering in the strange morning haze. The old man pressed the blade gently against the girl's palm, drawing a single line of blood that dripped onto the book beside my name. The ink shimmered, glowing faintly red. The girl screamed against her gag, thrashing wildly, tears streaming down her face. I pulled harder against my captors, adrenaline surging. "Stop this! She has nothing to do with me!" The old man tilted his head. "But she does. You both do. Only one of you may remain. Only one of you may belong." The shadows closed in, their smoke-like arms stretching toward both of us. The chanting rose to a fever pitch, and then the old man leaned closer to me, whispering so only I could hear. "Choose, Arjun. Either she stays, or you do." The villagers' smiles glowed brighter. The shadows waited, frozen, their claw-like fingers inches away from us. The girl's muffled sobs filled the silence between chants. I realized with horror, the village wasn't asking. It was demanding. And either way, Someone would vanish into Devpur forever. The old man's whisper still echoed in my ears. Choose, Arjun. Either she stays, or you do. The chanting swelled around me, pounding like a drumbeat inside my skull. The shadows swayed, waiting, their faceless heads tilted in unison. The girl's muffled cries tore through the noise, her eyes locked on mine, pleading, desperate, human. And I was frozen. What happens if I don't choose? I shouted, my voice cracking. The old man's smile widened. Then the village will choose for you. The blade glinted in his hand, catching the sickly gray sunlight. The book before him shimmered faintly with the girl's blood, my name glowing red as though alive. I shook my head violently. No, I don't belong here. This isn't my fate. The old man's eyes narrowed. Your name was written long before you were born. You were always meant to be here. No, I hissed. This is madness. The girl thrashed against her captors, muffled screams cutting through my panic. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but the villagers' grip was iron, their smiles unshakable. The shadows leaned closer, smoke-like tendrils curling around us. The air thickened, suffocating, each breath burning my lungs. I felt it then, the truth. The ritual wasn't about sacrifice, it was about exchange. One life to seal the village, to keep it hidden, to let it survive another 30 years. And my name, circled in blood, marked me as the next anchor. No, I whispered. It can't be me. The old man tilted his head, eyes glittering. Then give us her. My heart pounded so hard I thought my chest would split open. The girl shook her head violently, sobbing into her gag. I couldn't do it. I couldn't condemn her. But I couldn't condemn myself either. The chanting reached a fever pitch. The ground shook, the air cracked with strange energy. The shadows loomed directly above us now, their formless bodies pulsing with hunger. And then, everything stopped. Silence. The chanting cut off mid-word. The shadows froze in place. Even the villagers, still smiling, stood motionless. Only the girl and I moved, our chests rising and falling in frantic rhythm. Her eyes widened as she looked around, realizing the stillness. And then I heard it, a voice, not from the old man, not from the villagers, but from the shadows themselves. A chorus of whispers, layered, ancient. He does not belong, not yet. The old man's smile faltered for the first time. His eyes flickered, uncertain. What do you mean? He demanded into the silence. The shadows turned their faceless heads toward me. The whispers grew louder, filling my skull. His blood is not ready. The circle is not complete. The book on the altar shuddered, its pages fluttering as if caught in an invisible wind. My name glowed brighter, then dimmed, the circle of blood around it breaking apart into cracks. The old man's face twisted in frustration. No, it is his time! The village chose him! The shadows' voices boomed. Not yet! Another must remain. Another must bind the circle. Their heads turned in unison, toward the girl. Her muffled scream tore through the air as the shadows surged forward, engulfing her in a whirlwind of smoke and darkness. I shouted, struggling against the hands that held me, but they didn't move. They didn't need to, because the girl was gone. One moment she was there, thrashing and sobbing. The next, nothing. Only the faint echo of her scream, fading into silence. The villagers erupted into cheers, their smiles wider than ever. The old man dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead to the ground. It is done, he whispered reverently. The circle is sealed. I collapsed, my legs shaking, bile rising in my throat. My stomach churned with guilt, horror, disbelief. I hadn't chosen, but the village had. And they had chosen her. The shadows dissolved, vanishing into the air as quickly as they had appeared. The ground stilled. The strange energy drained away. Only the smiling villagers remained, their eyes now fixed on me. The old man rose slowly, brushing dust from his robes. His smile returned, calm, patient. "You see now, Arjun," he said softly. "This is how we endure. This is why Devpur survives." I shook my head, trembling. You killed her." "She is not dead," he corrected. "She has become one with us. The village consumes, the village remembers. And now, so will you." I stumbled backward, but the crowd closed in, hemming me on all sides. Their smiles gleamed in the dull light, their eyes unblinking. "You can't keep me here," I spat. The old man's smile deepened. "But you already are here. You were always meant to be." He leaned closer, his breath cold against my ear. "Devpur never lets go." That night, they locked me inside the clay house. I pounded against the door until my fists bled, but it didn't budge. The villagers' laughter drifted through the night like lullabies, soothing and sinister all at once. When exhaustion finally dragged me down, I dreamt of the girl's face, her terrified eyes, her scream, and the shadows that had swallowed her whole. When I awoke, my body was drenched in sweat. Morning light filtered through the cracks again, but something was different. The name on the wall beside me, it wasn't just mine anymore. Another name had appeared beneath it. The girl's. The girl's name was carved beneath mine. The same jagged letters, fresh and raw, as though some unseen hand had scraped them into the clay overnight. I pressed my trembling fingers against the grooves. They were still warm. A sickening realization swept through me. She wasn't gone, not completely. She was here, inside the village now, absorbed like the others. And if her name could appear, mine was only the beginning. I staggered outside. The morning air was thick, heavy, almost metallic. The villagers were already gathering in the square again, their endless smiles fixed in place. But this time, something was different. The old man stood at the altar, his arms raised. His smile had stretched unnaturally wide, the corners of his mouth cracked and bleeding. His voice boomed across the square, layered with something deeper, something inhuman. Today, the veil closes. Today, Devpur returns. The villagers cheered, a sound too synchronized, too rehearsed, like puppets pulled by the same string. I shouted over the noise. "What does that mean? What happens now?" The old man turned his gaze on me. His eyes were no longer human. They glowed faintly, swirling with a strange red light. "Did you really think, Arjun, that we disappear?" His voice carried an echo that wasn't his own. "We never vanish. We are merely hidden, preserved. Every 30 years we are renewed. The world forgets us so that we may endure." The ground trembled violently. Cracks split through the square, glowing with faint light. The air warped, bending as though the entire village was sinking into another world. Panic surged through me. "You can't take me with you. I'm not one of you." The old man tilted his head, smiling wider. "You already are. Your name is written. You were chosen long ago." I shook my head desperately. "Chosen by who?" He leaned forward, whispering, his voice colder than death. "By yourself." The words struck me like a physical blow. What are you talking about?" I stammered. The old man gestured to the record book on the altar. "Look." I was shoved forward by the villagers until I stood over the book again. My name glowed faintly red, the circle of blood around it now whole again. But as I stared, the letters began to shift, curling and twisting until the ink formed not one, but two names. Arjun Banerjee. Arjun Banerjee. Written twice. Once in ink, once in blood. My heart stopped. "This is impossible," I whispered. "Why are there two?" The old man's voice echoed behind me. "Because you came here before." Memories buried deep surged violently in my mind. Flashes, walking the same path through the forest as a child, standing in the same square 30 years ago. My grandmother clutching my wrist, whispering warnings I hadn't understood. And then, a face. My own face. Younger. Terrified. screaming as shadows dragged me into the dark. I gasped, stumbling backward. No, that can't be real. The old man's smile widened. It is. You were the sacrifice 30 years ago, but your fear was too strong. You resisted. You fractured the circle, and so the village waited until the day you returned to finish what you began. My stomach churned. My knees buckled. The villagers' voices rose in unison, chanting again, louder, faster. The shadows swirled above the square, their faceless heads tilting toward me. I screamed. If I was taken before, then why am I still here? Why am I alive? The old man's eyes burned. Because Devpur does not kill its own. It keeps us. It keeps you. You only think you left, but you never truly did. The village trembled, the sky above us cracking like shattered glass. Beyond the fissures, I saw darkness, endless, suffocating. And within it, shapes. Thousands of faces all smiling. The missing villagers trapped for eternity, their souls bound to Devpur. And among them, I saw her, the girl, her face pale, her eyes hollow, her mouth stretched into the same impossible smile. Arjun, she whispered, her voice echoing in my skull. Welcome home. The villagers surged forward, their hands cold and unyielding as they grabbed me, pulling me toward the altar. The book burned with crimson light. The old man raised the blade, his voice rising above the storm. The circle is whole. The time has come. Devpur returns. The shadows engulfed me. My scream tore through the square, but no sound left my lips. The world shattered. Light, dark, silence, screams, all folding into one endless void. And then, nothing. I don't know how long I was gone. Seconds? Centuries? When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in the square anymore. I was standing in a forest path, sunlight breaking through the trees. Birds sang overhead. The world was normal. Had it all been a nightmare? Relief surged through me. I staggered forward, desperate to leave. But then I saw it. Ahead, through the trees, lay a village. Smoke rising from chimneys. Children laughing. Women carrying water pots. Devpur, still alive, still waiting. And when I looked down at my hands, they weren't mine anymore. The skin was cracked, wrinkled, ancient. My reflection in a puddle showed the old man's face, his beard, his glowing eyes, his eternal smile. I understood at last. I hadn't escaped. I never would. Because Devpur doesn't disappear. It becomes you.